U.S. federal government has long been acting in its own self-interest. Neither the people comprising our patriotic military nor constituting the workforce of America supporting that military are the priority. It is instead the heartless, senseless machine that operates to perpetuate and grow itself into the monster we see it as today. So when we have bravery personified, a bold American with the guts and the evidence to blow the whistle on both the cause and the effect of government corruption, shouldn't we pay attention? What will it take for you to take action to support the military veterans who are getting shafted after personally risking their lives for their fellow Americans?
I'm Commander John Gregory Richardson, and I have been referred to as the perfect storm or the poster example of the difficulties our veteran population faces when trying to return home from deployment. I was discharged in September of 2012, and instead of the end of my career being the American success story, it has actually turned into the American horror story. I can tell you that the difficulties our veterans are facing now when trying to return home, if what is happening to me is common amongst our veteran population, it's any wonder that our suicide rate is so high. And I don't mean to sound arrogant or elitist, but given my experience, that is as a 30-year veteran who was selected for promotion to commander, I have a graduate degree from the College of William and Mary. I have worked for an inspector general's shop. I have been a member of an executive protection team for the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Vern Clark. I've done a number of things in my federal service over my 30 years, both as an active duty military person and as a civilian employee. In my last tour, I mobilized to East Africa in September of 2010. During my pre-deployment combat training, I did not realize it, but I suffered an injury and did not know the extent of that injury until later, much later during my deployment. And subsequently, I returned back. Doctors took a look at me, took a look at my back and my medical conditions, and actually told me that it was best that I retire. And actually, during my deployment, here's just some of the things that I did during my deployment, including helping to facilitate a Navy SEAL mission, also helping to facilitate Navy SEAL training. I was the fixer. I was the go-to person when it came to a difficult or a troubled project. I was the person that was thrown at that project. During the time when I returned in September of 2012, and I was on medical hold for a year, I was referred to by my case manager as a model patient. Not only did I do what was required of me as a patient, I also helped to mentor and help some younger sailors and folks get through the difficult time that they were also experiencing in terms of their injuries and trying to get through the end of their deployment and medical care and to return home. In my particular case, it's in my medical records that I was told the best thing for me would be retirement. So one thing I need to underscore is the fact that I was told I needed to take this path. Unfortunately for me, and again, this is even a recommendation of the commanding officer who was in charge of my medical unit that I was discharged from, basically saying that Lieutenant Commander Richardson at the time is a juxtaposition and that his previous high level of physical fitness has allowed him to make it this far in his career. So my doctors were amazed that given my condition, I have severe scoliosis and very severe arthritic conditions. I live in constant pain. I'm in pain as I speak right now, but given the fact that I was so into physical fitness, martial arts, and training, I was able, through my physical fitness, to sustain and extend my career. One of the first things that happened to me was my promotion. I was selected for promotion to commander. one of the first things that happened to me was I did not know it, and no one explained it to me. No one had me sign a document that said entering medical retirement under what is called the Temporary Disability Retirement List program. If you are selected for promotion, you will lose your promotion. So in my particular case, I was selected for promotion based on the work that I did in East Africa during my deployment as a fixer. I did so well, I was selected for promotion, but because I was retired under this Temporary Disability Retirement List program, which by the way is a program that the Recovering Warrior Task Force has recommended to Congress in their 2010 report that Congress do away with this program because its design is to return people to active duty, rehabilitate them medically and return them to active duty. However, only about 5% of the people that go through the program actually go back to active duty. So in my particular case, I was never expected to get better. I was never expected to recover. My conditions are degenerative in nature, so I should have never been placed into a program that was designed to return me to active duty. But again, the first thing that happened to me was my promotion to commander was taken away. And this is, I'm going to hold my thumb over this part, but this is an email from Gordon England, who was Secretary of the Navy and the first Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, actually requesting, and this is a very informal email, requesting that my promotion be restored. Another thing that I did was I wrote to current presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, and I asked him to look into the issues that I was experiencing vis-a-vis my lost promotion. Never heard back from Senator Sanders, and not only did I write him on this issue, on the loss of my promotion, I also wrote him on some other issues. Senator Warner is another person that I wrote to. And subsequent to my discharge, again, I was returned in September of 2011, was held by the Navy for 1 year, and was discharged in September of 2012. Honorably but medically discharged from the Navy in September of 2012. And I returned to my position as an analyst at Customs and Border Protection, which is a component under Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, Internal Affairs. So Internal Affairs, these are the cops. These are the people that are watching the guardians of our borders and our points of entry to the United States. And one of the things that happened to me immediately was based on the medical fact that I have trouble sitting or standing for extended periods of time. The longer I sit in one position or in one place, or the longer I stand in one position or one place, the more I build up pain and muscle spasms that will trouble me later on. And again, all this is well documented, and my medical record is absolutely voluminous. But when I returned to my job, one of the first things that happened to me was I simply requested, because of the nature of the job that I was in, I simply requested to be transferred into a non-sedentary job, the type of job where I could move around. For example, at Customs and Border Protection, Internal Affairs, the Reagan Building here in Washington, D.C., I was actually in charge of security for that building, and the duties of that position required me to move around a lot, go around the building, escort people in, go check things, go talk with the contract security folks. I could have been a van or a security driver. So there were any number of positions that have been made up for other people. And if you look at the record of positions at Customs and Border Protection, Internal Affairs, there were times where if you were socially or familiarly connected to someone, you would get the position that you wanted, and it would actually be custom written for you and non-competitively given to you. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, October 16th, there was an article in the Washington Post about the human resources person who Office of Special Counsel went after her for the exact same thing, and they went after the wrong person, but that's one of the articles that I sent to you. But one of the things that happened in my request for help is that the ranking member of the House Homeland Security Committee, Benny Thompson, actually wrote to then Secretary Napolitano and then Deputy Commissioner David Aguilar requesting a status and an explanation of how I was being treated. And the fact that the ranking member of the Homeland Security Committee actually wrote on my behalf is pretty significant in my opinion, but little did I understand that a lot of these federal agencies simply don't pay attention to what members of Congress actually request. Another person that I wrote to, Senator Sanders, again. I wrote to Bernie Sanders and told him about the difficulties that I was experiencing. Yes, this was September of 2012. By the time November of that year rolled around, I had exhausted all of my annual leave and all of my sick leave. And basically, I had to apply for protections under the Family Medical Leave Act. So my agency approved me leaving the agency, that is going out on leave without pay. But this was the same medical documentation that I had submitted stating that I needed to be in a non-sedentary job. So when I asked for a transfer or accommodations based on the Uniformed Services Employment Reemployment Rights Act, based on federal disability law, that was denied. But when the agency had an opportunity to just get rid of me, that is go out on Family Medical Leave Act, the same documentation was denied for one decision, that is my accommodation or transfer, but it was approved on me using leave without pay. Subsequently, I wrote several members of Congress, including my own senators. I wrote Senators Warner, Senator Kane. I wrote my congressman at the time, Jerry Connolly. When I relocated from Northern Virginia to the Richmond area, I wrote Congressman Dave Bratt. None of my congressional representatives, none of the people that I wrote to who are members of Congress took an interest in my story, or if they did take an initial interest, there was no follow-up. So basically, again, if you're someone who will reach out to a member of Congress and give them documentation, actual hard copy documentation of not only the personnel problems that you are experiencing, but also the difficulties that are going on vis-a-vis abuse of power, corruption, violating or putting at risk the security of the American people. These are the kinds of things that you're supposed to report to Congress, and in fact, even the Office of Special Counsel as a whistleblower, and subsequently none of these issues were challenged, nothing was done about them, and in fact, I have a letter here from the congressional liaison to Benny Thompson, and it actually states a review of CBP records, Customs and Border Protection records, indicates that Mr. Richardson filed a formal complaint with CBP on January 31st, 2013. This complaint was accepted for investigation and is currently being investigated. Once the investigation is completed, Mr. Richardson will promptly be notified and provided with a copy of the investigative file. CBP takes seriously the allegations of employee misconduct and has instituted policies pertaining to abuses of authority. Complaints of unprofessional conduct are recorded, investigated, and appropriate action is taken against CBP officers who are found to have violated this policy. This is dated March 8th, 2013. And despite writing to Congressman Thompson, despite writing to DHS, Homeland Security, the Inspector General's office, despite writing to the Office of Special Counsel, despite notifying my senators, I have yet to get a copy of this investigation. And as a matter of fact, the entire organizational chart for Customs and Border Protection, Internal Affairs, has literally been wiped clean. There is, to my knowledge, only one GS-15 director who is left out of the entire Internal Affairs organizational chart. The man who was in charge retired after being demoted. The other folks have been retired, demoted, or transferred to other jobs. So despite the fact that there has been a tsunami of change in Customs and Border Protection, Internal Affairs, and this is because of the allegations that I took into Congress, that I wrote and reported to Congress, the entire Internal Affairs organizational chart has changed, but I still find myself fighting a battle that has obviously ended, at least for the people that were in the wrong, but yet the person, the whistleblower, that is myself, the 30-year veteran who is supposed to be protected when he returns back from his deployment, is the person who is on the outs. Here we are, October 17, 2015, and I am still fighting for my benefits and for my rights. As a matter of fact, here is the letter dated January 29th, 2014 from the Office of Special Counsel dismissing my allegations against the official who was removed from his job. So the official is removed from his job, but the Office of Special Counsel, who is charged with investigating corruption and similar abuses, says nothing happened. The next thing I want to show you is this is a letter from an official from Customs and Border Protection, Internal Affairs. And believe it or not, this is my termination letter. And as I explained before, I came back to my federal job after my deployment under USERRA, that is the Uniformed Services Employment Reemployment Rights Act, protections. This legislation is designed to protect the financial and employment stability of mobilized veterans, such as naval reservists. In my particular case, when I returned to my job, based on my injuries and my doctor's advice, the civilian doctors that the Navy referred me to, the Navy doctors that I had seen, all of them recognized the fact that, again, prolonged sitting, prolonged standing in one place is something physically I simply can't do. I've gone through numerous tests, numerous doctors, dozens of doctors have seen me, so this is not a matter of dispute. But returning to my federal job, a Customs and Border Protection Internal Affairs officials wrote to me, and this is the letter, and I'm going to read the highlighted portion. The fact that you have been continuously absent from work, it incorrectly says September of 2012. It should say from November of 2012 because I exhausted my annual and my sick leave and subsequently applied for protections under the Family Medical Leave Act, which is going out on leave without pay. I'm still in a work status, but I'm on leave without pay, meaning I'm not generating any income, I'm not generating any leave, I'm not generating any sick leave, annual or sick leave. But it says, the fact that you have been continuously absent from work from September of 2012 for compelling reasons. Again, let me say that again, for compelling reasons beyond your control, referring to my deployment injury. I also considered your medical limitations as described in the documentation provided by your treating physicians and their impact on your ability to return to work in a productive status. But this is not just returning to work, this is returning to the specific position that my doctor said I should not be occupying because it only exacerbates my health. In considering, I considered your more than 25 years of federal service. I also considered your performance records and service awards, which are, again, I hate to say it, but I've been decorated for courage under fire. I was a member of the executive protection team, of a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I've been a military attaché. I've served in Tel Aviv, Amman, Jordan, all over the Middle East. So considering my entire record The close of this letter says that, therefore, in consideration of the foregoing and in order to promote the efficiency of the service, it is my final decision to remove you from your position effective March 8th, 2014. So this is the letter that says I was fired for my deployment injuries. This is the letter that effectively rubs salt in the wound of my injuries. This is my federal government firing me for being injured on my deployment. So not only did I lose my promotion because of some obscure rule that no one told me about under this temporary disability retirement list, I returned to my federal job as a disabled veteran and was subsequently fired for that. This is another letter I wrote back to Benny Thompson requesting the aforementioned investigative file on my complaints. So I've written again to Congressman Thompson. I've written to my senators, Senator Warner and Senator Kane. I've written to my congressman, Jerry Connolly. I've written to my current congressman, Dave Bratt. I've written to other members of Congress, including Tammy Duckworth. And I know that congressional reps cannot necessarily, they're limited in what they can do for people who are not their constituents. So many of these people that were not my representatives were absolutely horrified at what I was going through. And they were also horrified and disappointed that knowing the rules that they could not do anything for me. But here's one part of this letter that I would like to read. And again, this is a letter to Benny Thompson. For the record, I have sent email inquiries to Homeland Security Inspector General Hotline, CBP's, the DHS Joint Intake Center, and Office of Special Counsel seeking any information regarding my allegations documented under file numbers Inspector General. It's C1411248. The Joint Intake Center number is 201-30-9661, and my Office of Special Counsel file numbers are MA-13-3456, DI-14-334, and MA-15-3236. Even more puzzling is the fact that DHS, the Homeland Security Hotline leadership, referred my allegations back to Customs and Border Protection. And this is the confusion. So I complained to higher level authorities, and they literally refer my complaints back to Customs and Border Protection, Internal Affairs, for self-investigation, as though that is really going to end up in some sort of impartial inquiry. My complaints were against Internal Affairs officials. And again, as I mentioned before, the majority of these people have been demoted, retired, or transferred. Everyone involved in my case, from the Internal Affairs officials to the HR, a senior executive, to the EEO officer involved in my case, all of them have met with some form of punishment. Yet, I still find myself paying attorneys, and I still find myself out of a promotion from the Navy, which is a different matter, and terminated from my job, which, according to USERRA legislation, this is what I find myself in is exactly what this is supposed to prevent. This is going to be the most outrageous portion of this story, because all you need to do is simply be able to read a DD 214, but basically this line here on any discharge paper, this is going to say the amount of prior active duty service that I had prior to my last deployment. So here it says 15 years, 11 months, and 29 days. And there's also going to be a line C, for active service this period. 1 year, 11 months, and 15 days. So basically, you have the 15 and almost 2 years, so I have well over 17 years of active duty service, which I have purchased to contribute to my federal civilian retirement. Again, because of some very bad things that these Customs and Border Protection internal affairs officials did, this is a letter from the Office of Personnel Management notifying me of an over $45,000 debt that I have now incurred because, according to them, I only have 15 years of military active duty time. I just showed you the form, which is the only form that you are supposed to look at to determine how much time a military member has to contribute toward their federal civilian retirement. So in my particular case, this is a letter, and it is dated March 3rd, 2015, stating I owe the federal government $45,000, and the reason behind it is someone cannot properly read a DD-214, which is the military form, the only government form that can tell someone's active duty military time. So,
Are they saying they overpaid you?
yes. Now, here's one other thing that's in this letter. In one letter, it says my gross monthly annuity should be, and the figures here should be roughly $2,200. Has been changed from $2,200 to $3,400. This is March 3rd, 2015. I have another letter that is dated March 28th, the same month. So this letter says my pay has gone from $2,200 to $3,400. This letter says my pay has gone from $3,400 to $2,200. These letters, this one notifies me of a $45,000 debt, tells me my salary has been changed, my annuity has been changed from $2,200 to $3,400. I get a letter about 2 weeks later that says my pay has actually gone from $3,400 to $2,200. So not only do I have a $45,000 debt that is obviously erroneous, I also have two documents from the same agency within 3 weeks of each other that sent me conflicting information. And regardless of how many congressional representatives I've written to, these folks, as a matter of fact, none of my representatives, none of their offices return my phone calls. So Senator Warner, Senator Kane, Congressman Dave Bratt, none of them will talk to me anymore. They have basically swept me to the side. Bernie Sanders is campaigning to be President of the United States. I begged him for help. I talked to his office staff. I wrote letters. I have the letters. Bernie Sanders wants to be president. He wants to be commander-in-chief. If he wants to be commander-in-chief, he needs to explain why I exist, why I'm having these issues. And more importantly than that, let me get to one other thing. Okay, the last thing I want to show you, this is the most recent letter I received from the Office of Special Counsel. And keep in mind that my original complaint under the Uniformed Services Employment Reemployment Rights Act, USERRA legislation, went to the Office of Special Counsel. Because of the third year of a White House pilot project, my Social Security number ends in an odd digit. According to the parameters of this project, if your Social Security number ends in an odd digit, your complaint does not go to the normal place, the Department of Labor. It goes to the Office of Special Counsel. So, my original complaint, including all the other matters that I referred for investigation, have gone to the very same place, the Office of Special Counsel, which came in contact with me because they are part of a White House pilot project. So, in referencing the debt that I was talking about, the $45,000 debt from the Office of Personnel Management, based on incorrect or erroneous information that my leadership at Customs and Border Protection Internal Affairs sent to OPM, this is the $45,000 debt from OPM. The other letters I showed, this is the letter that I got October 13th, 2015 from Office of Special Counsel. And basically, this letter says, the first paragraph, second sentence, you allege that CBP officials falsified government documents and submitted incorrect information in order to disrupt and deny your disability retirement application. The fact that I have an erroneous $45,000 debt, that's okay. We don't need to discuss whether or not it's been disrupted or anything else. The $45,000 debt is a fact. So, however, last paragraph, we cannot find that any official has taken or failed to take a personal action as defined, and then they cite the U.S. Code, which violates any law, rule, or regulation. So again, this is one of the numerous, the dozens of letters that I've gotten from Office of Special Counsel that says nothing improper has gone on. So not only, again, going back to the beginning, the fact that Customs and Border Protection, Internal Affairs, all the officials involved in my case have been completely wiped out, demoted, retired, sent off to other jobs. Office of Special Counsel, the original people that I complained to about being mistreated as a disabled veteran returning injured from my deployment, still, they find absolutely no wrongdoing. They see no evil, hear no evil, and they're not, certainly not to me, speaking any evil. So this is what I think this all really comes down to. I left Compton, California in 1981. I lived in the projects of Compton at one point. Again, I went from Air Force enlisted to completing my undergraduate degree, went to graduate school at the College of William and Mary. And again, military attaché, member of an executive protection team for a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who, by the way, to this day does not know of an incident where I actually saved his life. This is the kind of thing, if this can happen, promotion taken away, fired from your federal job by the cops for your deployment injuries, erroneous $45,000 debt, all of the agencies that you go to and tell them this is what's going on. Not only do you tell them about this, you provide documentation that has been covered in the news, articles by Professor Lee Merrill under Homeland Security Newswire. Andy Ramirez on his website, andyramirez.com, reports the same thing. McClatchy News Service, Marissa Taylor, an investigative journalist, reports on these issues, but I continue to get letters that says nothing is wrong. So evidently, all the things that veterans are imagining, such as myself, they are nothing more than our imagination, working overtime. So maybe in these people's opinion, this is nothing more than symptoms of PTSD or something else. But I can tell you this, is that if this is what's happening to me, a younger, less experienced person who has perhaps a high school education and is from a rural community in the Midwest, from a border town along our southwest border, or from the inner city, such as Compton, California, like myself, what chance do they have trying to navigate the same carnival that is absolutely rigged? The reason why our suicide rate is so high is because we come home, many of us, we don't want a parade. We don't need a parade. All we need is for our government to fulfill the promises they made to us. And instead of doing that, these folks are snuffing us out one by one through nothing more than, it's not benign neglect. What is being done to me, this is being done by my federal government. A naval officer, there are people that are still alive because of my actions. There are bad guys that are dead or behind bars because of my actions. It's all in my military record, and this is how I am being treated. So if this can happen to me, if I can be referred to as the perfect storm or the poster example of what's going on with our veteran population, what chance does a younger person, less experienced person have? It's wrong, and it goes, as in my case, It starts at the White House because my original complaint was investigated under a White House pilot project. I can tell you this, in my experience with the demobilization process, that is the administrative process. In my case, and in the case of many of the people that I was medically on medical hold with, these folks were administratively, you had to get through that gauntlet to get to the medical part of your demobilization or your medical out processing. So the administrative part is designed to trick you or to get you in any way to simply sign off and go home as quickly as possible. So, as a matter of fact, one of the persons that was in charge, I actually had a great case manager, the nurse that took care of me. Again, I showed you the letter that described me as a model patient, didn't miss any appointments, but the captain nurse, she held the rank of captain, she was a nurse. We actually described her as, what is the hound that guards the gates of hell, Cerberus. We referred to her as that because getting past her, if you got past her to the medical treatment, the people that provided the Navy medical personnel were outstanding folks. But to get through that administrative process, for example, in my case, I was initially told, despite what my doctors were telling me, we'll keep you for 6 weeks, we'll put you on Motrin, and we'll just send you home. Mm-hmm. So in my particular case, again, Motrin for 6 weeks, and we'll send you home. Which we all know, according to my military doctors and the doctors that I was sent to for civilian aftercare, would have not been the proper method of treatment for me. Nevertheless, that's what was offered to me originally. And I told her that I'd literally signed a blood oath, that I had risked my life, literally several times, escaped death, and it is time for the Navy and for the government to honor their portion of the contract that I signed originally over 30 years ago. In the case of federal civilian agencies, I know for a fact, Customs and Border Protection, Internal Affairs, there were literally dozens of employees over several years sending numerous complaints to the Office of Special Counsel, to the Homeland Security Inspector General Office, dating back to before Charles Edwards, the gentleman who the Senate reprimanded in writing because of his actually making investigations and documentation and evidence go away, sweeping things under the rug. And in my particular case, again, Office of Special Counsel, who under this White House pilot project is actually working for the president, speaking and handling my case with the voice of the president. So not only is my case treated individually, and say that bowl of ball bearings that you were talking about, that you're going to try to spear one with a fork. Say that bowl of ball bearings represents the dozens of complaints, the dozens of letters. You have the official that would say, oh, let me help you, and takes your ball bearing out and sets it on the table in front of you and saying, see, that's how easy it is, there's no problem. You don't have any issues, you have nothing to complain about. There's nothing wrong going on here. Again, this is the same agency who just yesterday in the Washington Post went after the HR executive who was the last person in the position when things had been going wrong in her position as head of Customs and Border Protection Human Resources for years. The judge dismissed the Office of Special Counsel's case against this person because she was simply the last person there, and Office of Special Counsel did not bother to go all the way upstream to find out where the source of the problem started. So again, you have these federal agencies that have become very partisan. They are no longer the neutral agencies that they are supposed to be, simply carrying out the business of, in the case of Customs and Border Protection, protecting America's borders and its points of entry. So I've complained to all of the relevant oversight agencies, including Congress. I have members of Congress writing to Homeland Security and Customs and Border Protection. And when you have an instance where these federal agencies are thumbing their noses at members of Congress, when you have, for example, the Secret Service to get back at Congressman Chaffetz will release his personnel file, which says that he was turned down from a job, when you have federal agencies that are acting that way, then the system is out of control. The system is failing, and when it comes to the security of our borders and our points of entry, sooner or later, that failure will show itself in the form of another catastrophic event. There are too many employees, good employees, who have been literally run out of their jobs. And in my particular case, the legislation that was put that was enacted to protect me, the Uniformed Services Reemployment Rights Act, was designed to protect the financial and employment stability of those of us who are called from our regular civilian jobs to the military to go into harm's way. When we return, whether we're whole or injured, we are supposed to be able to go right back to our jobs that we left. That is the law. So not only was that law not followed in my particular case, it was not followed by a federal agency. Not only was this a federal agency, this was the internal affairs body of a federal agency. So the levels I mean, there are many people that I tell this story to, and they cannot believe this is actually happening. You have the Homeland Security Inspector General shop. I have letters. I have emails referring my complaints back to the very officials, and this is when they were still in their jobs. This was before they were demoted. This was before they were retired. This was before they were actually moved to other jobs, referring my complaints right back to them. So, you're a whistleblower. You've decided that what is going on is worth the risk of what you're about to step into, and the oversight agencies turn around and report. This is the same thing that happened in the example of the former Inspector General Charles Edwards. Anyone that filed a complaint, anyone that referred a complaint, that complaint was used as a basis for retaliation against the person that lodged the complaint. And this is not, I am not unique to this. Again, what I am saying is that this is a microcosm. This is an example of what is happening on a regular basis within our federal agencies. Congress is basically powerless to stop it because these federal agencies no longer follow Congress. They are following whatever administration is in place. And this goes back to not just this current administration, but the previous administration. So in many cases, you file a complaint, you give actual evidence, and if you have a number of employees that are complaining about the same things, those allegations, that documentation is not treated as a collective complaint. And in a matter of fact, there's also there was a class action case brought by an attorney by the name of Brian Lawler out of San Diego, California, and the basis of that complaint was you had military reservists, people that do their 2 weeks every year, 1 week in a month, who were being denied being hired or suffering retaliatory incidents because of their military reservist status. And the larger issue is this: if we continue to treat our volunteer military in this way, if you have relatives, if you have sons and daughters, nieces and nephews that are seeing their family members coming home from deployment and being mistreated, sure, you're going to have some people that's the only opportunity they have, so they're going to go into the military, they're going to roll the dice anyway. But there are other people in this country that are going to look at what has happened to their, whoever that example may be in their family, and say, you know what? As in my case, Uncle John says I shouldn't go in the military because the military isn't treating their people the way they should be. So if we continue on this path, what happens to the voluntary force?